What's up, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Pit Therapy Podcast with me, Trevor, and Kyle, and special guest. We got Tommy Green of HolyName, Sleeping Giant. You got all sorts of stuff going on right now, a bunch of projects, right?
Heck yeah. Yeah, hi.
Well, dude, seriously, we really do appreciate it. We've been talking for a minute now about getting you on, and I actually wanted to get you on after the successful event that you just ran for Rock Against Traffic out in California. Honestly, like before we really get into an intro, just how was that? How was last weekend for you?
Dude, it was awesome. I mean, we were trying to do, we're trying to do the charity thing for about 5 years. And a year ago, we were trying to piggyback on a corn show at USANA. Okay. And I was like, let's try to make this a bigger deal than we are, because then we gain a lot more eyeballs on what's going on. And then the homie Brian was trying to help us figure this out, but then they ended up having to go to Europe instead. And so I talked to some friends and was like, I thought we were going to be able to kind of like make it a thing quicker, but maybe we just got to start from the beginning. And so some friends were like, dude, just start year one, and then build it over time. And so that for me would be like, what's an easy way to serve kind of a scene that maybe would get our music and support it? It's like, dude, Face Down Fest hasn't happened for a few years. I know there's a bunch of like just kind of the Christian hardcore scene in Southern California. I was like, man, let me just do the Glass House year one. I'm sure I can make that a thing. And so we got dope bands on it, and a bunch of them were just friends. Everyone was like, dude, we're down to do it. People like were just really kind. And so, yeah, we sold it out, and that was awesome. We filmed it all, and then we're producing it, making it look cool. We're going to film some like info about human trafficking. My wife wrote a book, and so we're going to put her little commercial up so people can order it. And now we're going to just put it up on YouTube as like a live stream ticketed show for everybody else, because then it's just a fundraiser for charity, and it'll just live for a long time. So now it's like people will know what we're doing. So the show was tight because it was just awesome. But hopefully once we get all this stuff done, it'll actually help the charity that much more. So I think it was rad, man. I mean, it was awesome to see all the kids, and it just felt good to be able to play. And then I'm hoping it turns into something really cool as well. So,
dude, that's awesome. So the organization's actually Run Against Traffic, right?
Yeah. Yep.
How did you get involved with those guys? Because it's been years now that you've been involved with Run Against Traffic.
Yeah, we started it in 2018. And so really, we got contacted when I was in Sleeping Giant in 2015. And it was this young teenage kid that reached out to us, and she was in a really bad way. And I didn't want to talk to teenage girls on the internet. So I was like, yo, my assistant at the time and my wife were there. And I was like, Chrissy Green, will you reach out to this person and find out if this is real, or if I'm getting trolled, or like, whatever this is. And dude, sure enough, this kid was in the middle of like a bad situation at home. And so we were like, can we help find a youth organization or someplace for this person to go? That was about as much as we could do. Like, here's the contact for this organization. And then we got an email, a voicemail from her, like a Google chat message that was like, Chrissy, they're coming for me. Please pray. And you can hear like people in her household like banging on the door, and she's like, and sirens. And then we kept reaching out. We didn't hear from her for like 2 or 3 days. And then we got an email from a counselor at that youth center that was like, hey, we went to this kid's house and took this kid out of the situation. She doesn't really want to talk to us. Can you help us? Like, cause she was talking about this couple that was helping. And so we shouldn't even have been really involved, but then we were her safe place. And like, in that time, essentially she was it's almost like at a orphanage or like a halfway house. And then a member of her family basically kidnapped her out of that organization and trafficked her. And so she was found, I think it was like 4 days later, with like 14 or 15 other girls at this bar. And so it was bananas. And I thought it was a joke. Like, I was like, there's no way this is real. I'm waiting for them to make fun of me for being like a Jesus magic weirdo, or they're going to hit us up for money. And, I'm just like, this is a joke. There's no way that this is real. And so Chrissy stayed in because she's a mom and she's just got that heart. I didn't believe it. I still have a hard time believing that it was what it was. And yeah, dude, I mean, it was bananas. So that was 2015 to 2016. And then it's a real horrible story. Honestly, it's really hard. And then about a year later, maybe it was like 9 or 10 months later, we got hit up by a second girl that was at that first organization, and she needed help too. And so all of a sudden it was like back in this swirl. So I set up that big run, and I did a physical run. Sorry for those that don't know. I did a big run where I ran from the top of Utah to the bottom in October of 2018. That was really when we like kicked off Run Against Traffic. And it was the whole point of the organization is to raise money for aftercare. Once you get people out, if they don't have a safe place to go or they don't have long-term help, like 90% of them go back. So we just wanted to fundraise for aftercare in America and help. And so that was 2018, dog. And I did that big run. We're at the beginning. It's going to be awesome. And like just before that run, we just experienced, it felt like real deep, profound loss. Like my brother died really suddenly as I was in the middle of training. And then Chrissy and me had 3 miscarriages in 2 years. Her mom died of cancer. My uncle died the same weekend. My grandma, it was just like everyone started dying. Like the minute we stepped into this, it was just bananas. And so, and then as we're army crawling out of 2019, like, I think we can make it. I think it's going to be okay. Then COVID, like wham, and the whole world. And you're like, holy moly, what is going on? So it feels like, I can't believe it's been like 6 years since we started it, but that vacuum of whatever 2020, 2021 was, like, I like don't even know what year it is half the time. So we started it in 2018 with the run. The world changed so much that now what we do is we essentially partner with people, running clubs, sure, athletes, sure, but like businesses, individuals, community groups, however we can help people do what they like and fundraise with us. And then we just try to get the money to the good guys. And that's sort of where we've landed, because we thought it was going to be mostly running when I started. And then over the last few years, it was like, we had homies from the city like that were like, hey, I'm a tattoo artist. I was like, would you do like a flash day for us? And so boom, all of a sudden now friends from different parts of the country are doing tattoos against traffic, and barbers were doing razors against traffic. It was just like all of a sudden different businesses were kind of jumping in. And I was like, this is easier, because then people get to do what they were going to do anyway, but they get to do it for a cause. That's helpful. Let's do that. So ultimately we just want to raise a bunch of money, get it to good people, and in the background start saving it so that we can become one of those organizations that gives money to people. But that's a long-term plan. It was like, how do you create a foundation that generates revenue for good people? So that's kind of Run Against Traffic. So yeah, since 2018 we've been going, and then, we had tons of plans to do different stuff, and now we're putting on hardcore shows, and all the children are moshing, and that's what we do. So
hey, it's good. That's for a good cause. So, I mean, we jumped like right into this stuff, right? And that's awesome, because honestly, that saves us the awkwardness of like trying to get into it. So thank you. We typically wait though for like the end of the episodes to do some of this, but I feel like, if people aren't going to listen to everything, which I hope they would, but so you've got social medias. Is it Run Against Traffic? Like, I just want to make sure that like if people get to this part, like let's make sure they know exactly where the info is.
Yeah. RunAgainstTraffic.com.
Okay.
And just, yeah, that's an easy one, man.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you for doing that. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, no, of course. Like me and Trevor are idiots. Like if anyone's listened to our podcast, we're like not serious people at all. And so I want, before we get into that stuff that people expect from us, I want them to understand that like, this is a great cause.
No, thanks, man.
Like mad respect to you. We've always like in the history of what you've done music wise, we've always had a ton of respect, because
thanks, man.
We felt like and I think we're going to ask a few questions about it, because we're curious.
Yeah, dude, for sure.
We've always felt that you were one that would walk the walk. Right. And this just goes along to prove it. And we're on board. Like if there's ways that we can help.
Dude, I appreciate it.
We've got contacts in other places.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Dude, for real, the best thing I would say too is like Chrissy Green. So my wife wrote this book, and that'd be the thing is like, if you look at our website or any of our stuff, Chrissy's got a book out, and she wrote the whole story. honestly, without my wife, she's the gangster. I'm the moron that's loud. So I said, let me do something to get attention.
Yeah.
So Chrissy, my beautiful, quiet, wonderful human, can tell the story. So go buy the book or check it out. It's called Many More Like Me. It's coming out in the next couple weeks. So Many More Like Me by Chrissy Green. That's our story. Pick up a copy, share it with a friend. That would be a great way for people to check it out. But it's at RunAgainstTraffic.com. But yeah, support Chrissy Green. She's the gangster. I'm a circus clown. Let's go.
I'll tell you what, when that comes out, make sure you hit us up and let us know. Maybe we'll we'll grab a copy and we'll do a giveaway. We'll throw that out.
Oh, that'd be sick.
So
yeah,
we'll
anything like that is so awesome, you guys. Thank you.
No,
yeah,
that's incredible.
Appreciate it.
Man, 10 minutes in and we like that's the most important thing we're going to talk about this entire episode.
That's probably the most important thing we've talked about in the year we've been doing this. So.
No way, dude. No way. That's funny.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So I did want to talk a little bit about, the show, the actual show part of it. Cause
Love to.
That lineup was stacked. Like I, unfortunately, have never been able to see Dynasty play.
Dude,
holy cow.
They're my favorite. This is funny. So Eric Gregson, who played guitar in Sleeping Giant on Sons of Thunder and Kingdom Days, so on our second and third record, has been like one of my best friends since I was like 18. At the end of the band, he was running the print shop side of a company called merchconnection.com, which I think a lot of people went to MerchCon to buy merch. So he was like the screen print side, not the website side. He sold that to make his first movie. And so he wrote and directed like a feature film. And he called, I knew he was doing it. And my aspirations as an actor were like, let me get shot with an arrow. Like, that's all I wanted to, like in a movie, I wanted to be that dude that's like, this one's for the kids. And then gets like shot out of a window. Like that was the coolest thing. If those guys that like get like punched down a flight of stairs or so, I was like, that you're in a movie. You did it. There it is. Like, that's really cool. So that was like as much as I wanted to do. And he called me. He's like, hey man, I want you to read for a part in the film. And I was like, sick. So he sent me a side and I did a video in my kitchen or my living room. My kids are interrupting. I don't even, I'm like, it's for Uncle Eric. It doesn't matter. So I sent it to him and then he hits me back a couple days later. He's like, hey, I showed it to our producer and he said, that's a good read. And I was like, great. And he's like, so we want you to be in the movie. And I'm like, great. And he goes, we want you to be the lead in the movie. And I was like, oh, no. And I mean, forgive me, but I was just like, dog, you need to hire a fucking actor. Please. Please don't make me do this. Like, please hire a professional, And he's like, no, dude, I think you can do it. It's really just like it's the demo to try to get the band signed, And he's like, I have this story. I think you could pull it off. So anyways, I got to act in this, movie. Well, it's a pre-Western. So like it's the 1800s. I'm this like settler weird guy that works with these native tribes to like rob gold miners and stuff to like keep them off of native. I'm like a bouncer for like the native tribes that like, so anyways, well, we needed like a bad guy. And so they hired this bad guy who he was awesome. He's been a native actor in different stuff. I think he was in The Revenant. I think he was in other things, but he was supposed to be the main bad guy. And like, dog, he was not scary. Like there was no way. We were supposed to like fight. And I was like, dude, there's no way people are going to believe that this guy, like I'm a nice guy. I'm a joyful, I will kill this fool. Like there's no way anyone would believe that he's like formidable. And I told Eric, I'm like, what about Joel? And he's like, what? And I was like, Joel Muniz from Dynasty. I was like, he's awesome. And he looks like a tough cat. And he's one of our dear friends. Let's call Joel. And Joel's an extra on one of the other days. And I was like, call Joel. And Joel has always wanted to be in movies. I didn't know. And he became like the nemesis. So me and Joel have been homies for a long time. So then we got to be in a movie together. It's like all crazy. So anyway, so I love Joel and Ruben and all the Nasty Boys are like my favorite. And so they were awesome and they haven't played for a long time. And I felt stoked because they came to do this show and no joke, like they sounded better than they've sounded in like 5 years. Like they were so pissed. And Brando from Desmadre played guitar and stuff. I mean, it was like, I was so excited to watch them, and they were pissed. It was great. It was so much fun. So yes, ask me anything. I'm so
Well, no, I mean, just, it was, I mean, Meadows, like kind of a newer band, like
yeah.
they're awesome. You know, it seemed like a great lineup.
I was trying to figure out if maybe Rock Against Traffic, and this is just my like weirdo world, is just like, we've been in a weird, like the scene as a whole is like growing huge. Yeah. I'm in this weird subculture of a subculture, in that like Christian hardcore is really important to me. It really did help save my life. And so we've been in this weird spot where it got like real, and I was part of it. It was part of the problem. I don't mind. Really preach core. And then we've been in the dead zone, and that's just how it works. Like there's just these cycles of like, it becomes cool to be spiritual, and then it kind of goes away. Just like it'd be cool to be straight edge for a while, and then it'll dip, or like, that's just how people are. And so we've been in this weird valley for a while, but there is a bunch of young, really good Christian hardcore bands that are like coming back up. And so I was wondering if maybe part of the function of Rock Against Traffic would be, people know me because of SG, sure. Maybe I could be on the bill, but like maybe we should just highlight young bands coming up. Maybe that would be the thing. And so Doom is homies, and I tour with them forever. Dynasty I loved. I just wanted to play with them. But then I was like, who are some younger bands that I think are really good? And like the Meadows kids are just incredible. Like they were super awesome. So Convictions are Ohio kids, and I've played with them in the past. I didn't know them as well, but HolyName did a song with Mike, and so he sang on one of our songs, and I just thought, dude, let's get Mike out, because we've never really hung out, and so this was a way for us to actually get to perform together. Their band's incredible. They just put out a new full length that's like insane. Like it's actually really, really good. And then I was trying to think of who else I was talking to that was like a younger.
Yeah.
There was a couple. Anyways, but yeah, just good bands, man. Good bands.
So just a couple questions, then I'll let Trevor jump in because I'm hogging a lot. But
good, man.
The first question I wanted to ask, though, how do you feel, though, standing up there playing with HolyName? I mean, you talk about trying to highlight some of these younger bands and stuff. Do you think HolyName, though, are younger kids getting interested in that? Or is it just a bunch of old heads that are like, hey, I know this guy from
I feel like it's old dad people. I still don't know who we are in that, to be fully upfront. I like it. Yeah. I'm very grateful for it. I'm really, really stoked on it. And I thought for sure, like what was cool was that was really like our audience in a big way. That was like a whole sellout crowd of the dudes that I knew would be interested.
Yeah.
And it was old and young, and mostly people wanted to like be together. Yeah. So when I thought everyone was going to be like punching each other, they're standing there just like, it was almost like, I thought for sure people were going to move more. Nope. It was like people just wanted to like be. And so it was very and I don't know if that's our actual vibe, or if it's just because people are so hungry to just get together and be, and forgive me, but like just be able to like worship together and just, It's been a long time. So I just don't know if maybe we're just meeting that need and then they'll be able to have fun. But like, I thought for sure when we started, kids would be mule kicking each other. That did not happen. And I was just like watching the crowd, like, am I missing it? Like, are you guys not having a good time? But like, people were pumped. It just was a different vibe. So I'm hoping over time, if like younger kids hear us, that they're in. But I'm mostly just grateful to be able to play music, man. I thought I was done at the end of SG. And for me, I've been Preach Core Lives was like waiting for that next group of people to come up. Like I heard it from Strong Arm or NIV and Figure 4. And like, I was inspired to be that next generation of kids that was like about it. And I keep waiting for it. And I get to be kind of a part of it now, but there's a whole, I think there's going to be a whole lot of new like Christian hardcore bands that are actually really good. I don't know what they're going to be like. Yeah. But I think it's going to be a good little wave. So
that was kind of like my follow-up question to that is like, cause you know, we grew up on a lot of that, you know, Face Down always had Face Down and like Solid State always, just, you know, awesome bands. But I wish Face Down would bring back like Looking Forward, Call It Preserve type of hardcore, like Christian hardcore, you know?
Hardcore bands.
Exactly. Like more traditional hardcore. Do you think the kids are going to start playing that again, or is that
I don't think you can stop it, man. I mean, ultimately, that's the beauty of the scene thriving is like, and maybe it's different in Salt Lake. Maybe it's different in Salt Lake because our culture is just a little bit different.
Sure.
Which I kind of love. We're distinct in the country. That's fine. In Southern California, though, there's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 more dynasties. They're out. They're just LA hardcore kids, just like getting after it, and they love God, but they're just like where they are. So I hope for that here. I hope for that everywhere. But I also know that there's a lot of like metalcore kids that are happening, and then there's weird like I'm almost like sort of excited. There's a young dude, and he's like it's just him, but it's called Pipe Bomb. Look him up. He's like, it's like botch. It's like noisy, awesome. Okay. So I think that if we just give people permission to just be whoever they're going to be, we might get some really good sounding music in the next couple years. Like that's kind of what I like about all of this is it feels kind of reminiscent of when I first got involved in the scene in like the mid to late 90s. There was so many different sounds happening and everybody was cool that like, I don't know. So I really hope so because I love hardcore.
Yeah.
I just do. Yeah. And I would love to hear what that's going to sound like now. I think so, man.
Yeah. I love hearing that. That's cool. I mean, what we do a lot on this podcast is kind of look for smaller local bands around the country and try and showcase them and stuff. And we're seeing the same thing. Like we talked to this band, another Christian band called Plead the Widow's Cause out of New Jersey. Yep. Awesome guys. But they're bringing back this like old school, like almost MySpace sounding post-hardcore vibe. And I'm like, this is incredible that we're coming full circle to sounds that I grew up with.
Yeah, man. I think that's what's interesting is like, there's all this, there always has been, there's a sense of almost like elitism or there's different cliques within the thing. What will do that is a couple of real hardcore guys getting saved, like actually hitting a breaking point and kind of giving their life to faith and to God and then allowing them to just be who they are. Yeah. And I think when that stuff happens, that's when what's the sound that was in them anyway? You just give them permission for that to come out. And so a lot of the kids that came up on that stuff, what are you hearing? You're hearing the bands that were their favorite when they were little. Now they get to do it. So I just keep waiting for like, who are the kids? And I hear it in the like kind of normal hardcore scene. It's like, what are we covering right now? Dudes are covering 100 Demons. Dudes are covering, like I'm just like, okay, cool. We're almost there. We're almost there. Like I swear I'm like, okay, I want to hear the Christian bands that are going to cover all of the bands that I knew growing up. And then they're covering 2010, they're playing
Sleeping Giant. Exactly.
No. Hey, funny story. One time we were just about to get, and forgive me for saying this, it's like whatever, but we were just about to get into a fight in a parking lot here in Salt Lake City with a band that was on tour. And some friends had some beef and they were going to settle it. And almost like a movie, like we're standing there, the dudes are squaring up. We're like all there in the parking lot. As it's about to kick off, a band inside started covering Blame It on the Holy Rollers by Sleeping Giant. So I'm standing there and I'm like watching my dude and just trying to make sure that like all of us are just waiting, kind of like half the crowd is just waiting to see if they're going to get to jump in. And the other half is just making sure that it's like kind of a standard fight. Yeah. So we're standing there in the parking lot and then and all my friends just turned and looked at me and I was like, I don't know. I didn't know who it was. So anyways, no, I mean like when SG started, I remember that we came here on one of our first times we played in Salt Lake and we covered like Life of Agony. And I remember watching my homie Jake like look up at me and he's like, are you serious right now? And then it popped off, so maybe it's TUI, maybe it'll be like, I don't know, Cold World. It'll just be like these weird bands from Suburban Scum or like that kind of era where there were church shows happening. It's like they're going to play their music, but they're also going to play what informed them. And that's the weirdo blend of our cool culture is like you give what you have. And so I'm excited to see, like you said, real hardcore bands. And I'm really intrigued to know because the whole world seems to have kind of shifted a bit. Like I know there's labels, but like, are there
Right.
kind of, it's like, what is really going to be necessary for some of these guys? And there's a site that we've been working with on the merch side, because we launched like a merchandise, like a screen printing and merch company in Midvale a few months ago. And so we've been doing merch for people. And then one of our clients is this kid who's got an online account called Kingdom Core. And for some reason, he's super kind. We do merch for him now, and he's been really awesome. But like, there's a gathering point of all these new bands. And there's a part of me that's like, these guys might just need friends to be like, hey, we'll help you put your music out. I don't know if, unless you want to do physical records, it's like, I don't really know what the future holds for some of these like label conversations. You really need it? I don't know. I just don't know. So
it's interesting that you're saying that. Like, I don't feel like you need a label anymore. You need a social media manager.
That's,
like,
yeah.
A platform like what you're talking about is just like a congregation point, a jump off point kind of thing. Like, again, we're absolutely nobodies, right? Like, but we are trying to find like smaller bands, people that we are interested in, and at least getting a name out there, right? For the tens of people who listen to us, right? And maybe you'll find a new band that you'll dig, right? And maybe you'll tell a friend, and maybe, you'll go from 10 listeners to 20 listeners. Who knows, right? But at least there's something there. And it's just the world we live in. Like, labels these days, again, we're not musicians. We don't know like the ins and outs of like contracts and all of that kind of stuff. But we talk to so many people who can self-produce, get all that stuff. They just need the audience.
Yeah.
And it's just social media at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I agree with you in a lot of ways. I know there's a lot more ins and outs on some of the releasing, and you need to have certain access for the streaming sites and stuff. Like I know there's grown up stuff attached to that. But when I was first getting into the scene, we would get this catalog that was called Very, and you'd open it and there was just all the records. And I mean, it was like European hardcore and like all the American hardcore bands. And you could find everything in these like zines, these distribution zines. So you'd read these distros and see everything. And it would be like, oh, this is our world. And you could kind of like, oh, they're on, whatever. They're on Good Fight, or these guys are on Eulogy, or these guys are on Indecision, or these guys are on whatever. And you're reading these labels and you're kind of getting familiar with like, oh, that's pretty tight. Okay, well, let's check that. That band looks cool. Like, let's order that one or whatever. And the internet does that now. So there's a part of me that just feels like, I think you're onto something in that. If you have a gathering point, if you have a fire that people gather to, really you're helping these bands gain exposure. And then will that help people check their music out? Yes. The bridge between the internet and like real shows is way wild to me. Like, I can't tell you the amount of people that I've talked to where like they're like almost 30 and this is their first show.
It's wild.
Yeah. And I'm like you first time you saw this band, and it's like, no, it's my first concert. And they've like lived on the internet for so long that I'm like, whoa, like, so everything about, it's like the game has changed on every level. And I still love the fact, but I think you're right, man. It's like, you can set up these worlds in this social media era. And if the goal is to serve the scene and like actually connect with people, I think you can do really well. You can help bands and put people on and all that. So, I mean, time will tell, dude, but like, even within our world, I'm like, within our little weirdo box, I'm like, man, we might need to help become almost like that distribution site for new bands coming up, because who's going to get behind them? I don't know. And I don't want to do it. I'm not that guy, but I've got friends that could, like, so it's like, okay, well, can we help this thing go? Because the next, weirdo, suicidal, messed up kid might need that. And maybe it's not all these other people, but I know some people that are like me. And so I want to keep that going. So if you guys are putting eyes on these new bands coming up, it's like, bro, there's a real value there. And I think if you can help these bands find where they can be heard and be seen, that's all a label I think is supposed to do. Yeah. But when you make it into the big business model, I think that's when some stuff gets lost. And business is fine. Help these guys make money, that's fine. But like, when it becomes, when the bands exist to make the label money, that's like where I think it all got flipped. And it's like, it takes money to put out vinyl and order records from across the country and get them all pressed and it's like, you need money to make it go. But I think we're in a spot where it could actually flip back to like the artist has a bit more authority. The artist has a bit more control. The artist has a bit more say over their destiny because we don't need you. We don't need you. So it's interesting. HolyName's doing a thing. We have a EP coming out and we're going to go to, we're doing this live stream that'll be coming out in September. And then we're doing we've been recording an EP and I recorded with Nick from Johnny Baseball and
he's in everything. Yeah.
He plays everywhere, right? Like Nick Harsher, the drummer Nick. And so he recorded with me. So we're going to put that out in, I believe, like October. And that's on Nuclear Blast has like a sub distributor called Blood Blast. And so we're just putting out the 4 or 5 songs with them. And that's a new thing. I'm just like, all right, well, you guys get to keep these little things, but then everything else belongs to us. Cause I don't like that feeling of like, we made this, but like, you're going to own it. Like, why? Like we're busting our butts to make it happen. Like, what is that? So I'm really trying to figure out what does this look like? And so we've done label. Now we're doing this just kind of online thing and we get to do a lot of our own. And I think at some point I'd like to do some independent releases just to feel it. But there is some strength to having people help people hear your music. Otherwise, no one sees it. That sucks, dude. So that's a weird one to try to navigate. It's a changing landscape. Maybe that's kind of what I think. But
no, for sure. Your last single, Stained Glass, it's fantastic. It's
phenomenal. Oh, thanks, man. What did you like about it?
I was just listening. You're putting me on the spot, bro.
Yeah, we're gonna see if he actually listened to it, man. So yeah, good question.
He's like the spinny skull guy.
Yeah, no, I mean that's realistic.
It's like silver, but like it's like metal, you know. And
hold on, I'm gonna go on mute real quick.
Yeah.
Like realistically, I was listening to you guys in the car today when I was listening to the album and I was listening to Stained Glass.
Cool.
What you were saying earlier about just like the vibe that you got from the show. To me, like this, we are dads. At this point, we are dads. It feels like dad metal to me.
Yes,
and not a bad way. Maybe. Like it's clean, it's catchy. Like there's a lot to it, right? But instead of like the dad rock that you got on like Sirius XM and stuff, that was like I don't even know who to call it, right? It has a breakdown in there. I'm like, I'm here for that. That's what I grew up on. That's what I want to hear. And, it's just solid.
We're dad rock, dude. We're lifestyle music, baby. We're pop. That's what we do.
You're there, man.
We've said that about a few bands. Like, I just went and saw Hot Water Music.
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, Hot Water Music.
Where'd they play?
So I'm down in Dallas.
Sick.
Yeah, I've been in Dallas for a few years now. So I saw them down here with like Quicksand and
where were they at? Were they at Trees or were they somewhere else?
They were at Gillies. Yeah, it's on like the southeast side of Dallas. So.
I don't think I ever played there. That's cool. That's really awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So, but hopefully we get you down here then. And
I know. We were talking about it. We're really trying to figure out what could something like, because my whole point of like any of this stuff would be like rock against anything I do at this point because of what happened with us in the counter trafficking space is like our mission, me and Chrissy Green's mission for the foreseeable future, when we have the opportunity to do stuff, will be unto like that. So when I think about it, I go, where would it be cool to do rock against traffics? And so when I talked to Doom and Dynasty, I was like, do you guys want to go to Japan? I was like, let's just do this. Because everyone's like, dude, let's do this again. Like everybody had such a good time that I was like, do you guys want to go somewhere? And they were like, yeah. So I think Nashville would be cool. I think Dallas would be tight. I think Florida would be cool. In terms of like the Midwest, I would probably do like Ohio, like, cause I want it to be like a good meetup. And in SG, there were just little parts where people came out. And so it's like, okay, where do you make this like really fun? So anyways, just thinking about that a little bit, but it'd be cool to get down in Texas, dude.
A couple of the Doom guys are down in Texas too, right? Dude, I think Brooks is Austin. Is that right?
Yeah, right outside of Austin. Yeah.
B-Rook. And I'll drive to Austin for it. So
I would too. I think it'd be tight to get down there, man. It's awesome. That's cool.
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead, Trevor.
Well, so I wanted to kind of circle back around to what you were talking about,
Sure.
like this cycle that we're going through. And you said something when you were just talking about labels that at some point bands were getting signed to make labels money,
Hmm.
right? So, and obviously that's the point of a label, right? We all have heard the horror stories of Victory Records and some of these other ones that have happened. But I'm not asking you to call anyone out, but Christian hardcore was the name of the game 2006 to 2010, 12, 13, somewhere
Yeah.
in that range, right? And did you, being such a big band in the scene, so influential in the scene, see a lot of these bands coming up and using that Christian label who you could kind of tell weren't actually like
Yeah, for sure.
walking
100%.
the walk, so
For
to
sure.
speak?
Yeah, you could see it with anything though. I would say like this, you could put it in any box. Like I grew up with around super and I'm still the exception of like Holy Communion. I'm straight edge. You know what I'm saying? I've been since I was 15. There was tons of straight edge dudes that like they got the tattoos and they were awesome and you could tell they were just trying to score chicks. They didn't really care. They didn't really have heart. So when it got popular to like not be, they bailed. There was, lots of people they just sell out whatever because this is also a scene full of teenagers into 30-year-old men. It's like people's brains aren't even done developing till they're like
Yeah.
24. Like, so, this is the whole thing. But to be specific, there were bands on the Scream the Prayer tours that you could just look at and you're like, you guys have no clue who you are. You legitimately are doing this because you don't know any different. And this is what your parents told you. That's awesome. Have faith. But like, there's a difference to some of the dudes that I knew that were on tour that they suffered internally or they paid a price to have faith. And those people seem to have a bit more grit. And even if they rose and fell, you couldn't take it away. And so yes, there was tons of bands, and I would say it like this. I mean, not for nothing. I'm not trying to be a dick, but the face down world to me on a lot of levels, because I felt like it was more hardcore kids by hardcore kids. I like face down's world way more than I like Solid State's world. Solid State's world to me seemed way more influenced by marketing, sales, and weird. It was popular. They had more money. It just felt more. The bands. I don't believe a lot of them. I'm sorry, I just don't. And so I remember thinking when we bump into like that world, I'd always be like, "Who are you guys? Like who are you? Like do you believe anything? Like what is the matter with you?" But it was a different world is the best way to say it. I don't mean to be shitty. I'm just saying it's like in terms of the culture of Christian rock, that's where a lot of bands I feel like went and you could just bounce. You could just,
Yeah.
It's like, it just felt like, are you guys actually a community or you're just a label? Because Face Down to me felt more like a gang. And it was like people knew each other and JD and Virginia had a certain culture and they were hardcore guys. And you know what I mean? So it was, maybe it just makes sense to me, but yes, my feeling would be on a ratio, I'd be like, yeah, Solid State bands fell off way more than Face Down bands did. So I think that's what I think. That's just what I think. But like, who cares, right? Like, what do I know? But I'm just saying, it's like, yeah, there was a lot of kids that did it because it was popular. It's really easy to be it was more easy to be in a Christian metal and hardcore band for those 6, 7, 8 years. It became a wave based on belief. And I don't know who believed or not, because ultimately time is going to tell. If you don't believe at the end, you didn't believe. So who knows? You know what I mean? Like,
And that's
straight edge.
honestly
If you're not now, you never were.
I
Punk.
know, right?
You know what I'm saying? Like,
Stanley Severs right there. It's honestly, we've talked a lot about that because we've talked a lot about, like we're grateful that there's a boom in hardcore. Like I love the revival that's happening. A lot of kids are getting involved and I think it's a net positive right now.
yeah.
I do think though that like there is some stuff that like, I guess in a metaphorical way to say it is I think that there's going to be fat that gets trimmed, right? These kids that aren't in it with their heart, that don't believe it. And I'm not talking just Christian I'm talking hardcore in general, right? Like
that's it. Yeah.
Kids that aren't in it, like they're not going to be here in 5 years. We think there's a lot of bands that have gotten huge in hardcore that have done it to sell out and make money and are just riding that wave. And they're not going to be here in 5 years. And, so we've always been curious about, the Christian scene. Cause again, those were bands that we grew up on. Utah has a very unique culture. Like we rode out to all the Scream the Prayer tours. Like that was our outlet, right? Like I said this on the last episode. It was music of people that were pissed off like I was, but still believed what I believed. And that brought me out, right? That gave me purpose. That gave me a reason to, explore and grow as a person. And so I'm very grateful for it. But even us as in the fans, down on the floor could tell like, that this isn't authentic. This isn't genuine.
Right? Like there's a substance, because that's what I would say. Like, what does the book of Hebrews say? Now faith is the substance of things. So faith is substance. Yeah. And if you have it, you can feel it. And if it's not there, you can feel it because it's a substance. It's like tangible. And so you're totally right. It's like, hey, the proof isn't what I think as some dork on stage. What did you feel in the crowd? Did you believe them? Did you really believe them? Because if you didn't, like that would be the testimony. There's friends that I have that said, God, I was talking to this would be the testimony. Like my friend that was like super satanic, like very, had like all the sixes tattooed on him and was like real burly and mean, beautiful, great guy, but like totally doesn't believe any of it. He's like, he looks at his like satanic tattoos and he goes, this is a joke. He's like, I don't believe any of this. And then he's in front of people with me and he goes, this guy really believes this. It's like, if you don't feel like that, like you don't even have to like what the person's saying, but if you know they are about it, that's a different feeling. I don't believe, but I think you do. Yeah. That's it. And if that's what's coming out, that's the hardcore scene to me. Is it's like 100% indestructible belief and you can't break it. So even if it's misguided and it's just hate core, militant, rah, at least they mean it. Like you're like, yo, that's not going anywhere. Like that dude is way mad. Like holy moly. But it's like at least that's real in the moment. So that would be my thing is like all the bands that you can tell didn't have the way that the Lord would say, you sprinkle seed on the ground. Some people have shallow roots. And so it springs up all quick. It looks like a thing. And then the minute times get tough, they're gone. Just shallow roots, man. That's just how this thing works. And so there might've been a lot of bands that sprung up quickly, but when the trial really came, they were gone because you need endurance. You need to have a real faith. And I think it takes suffering, man. It takes time to really dig down into your heart and like really get it in there. And I don't wish the pain on anyone, but I wish the struggle for everybody, like earn it, like figure it out. Or like what you said will happen. Just, it doesn't mean anything. These kids just bail. And you're like, I thought this was like a God thing. Shouldn't that like matter forever? And it's like, no, man, it was just a scene. It's like, no. Man.
The label required it.
Right? Do you know what I mean? Hey, you're going to play these church shows and make that money. You better. It's like, dude, get away from that. For real.
That's so funny. It's funny that you just said that shallow root thing. I was just at one of my friend's child's birthday parties before we came onto this. And his wife has a sign up in their house and it says, you don't get the flowers without the rain. And so it's just, it's one of those like stupid signs, right? But it's like, it's true, right? You know what I mean?
Well, I guess that's the thing is like with the Redlands kids, at least like I was like a pastor, right? So I was like really actually doing the Christian thing. And I was trying to serve a community and I was watching people lose friends and relatives. I was watching people's families turn on them for becoming Christians. We were in it. I was really in it. I didn't do the band it was like, this was first before the band. So then when we'd go on tour, people would be like, well, do you really think that God? And I'm like, dog, we solved that at home in real time, like years ago. Like tell that story to someone else that doesn't know. Like, we've really paid a price to be here. And so we're not going to be swayed by the culture. Like, that's not going to happen, because we're trying to do this for real, for real. But unfortunately, a lot of bands are like traveling salesmen. It's like you're in a different city every day. You're becoming an adult in real time. You're making mistakes, maybe. Like, that's a horrible place to try to find your identity.
Yeah.
Sometimes,
because
it's like, whoo, man, that road has hurt a lot of young men for sure. So it's just a tricky place. I don't want to begrudge or be, crappy to anybody. It's like, dude, that's a hard place to discover who you are. If you don't really have a scene or a community or a church, or like, if you don't have a people and you go out on the road, dog, that thing can take you out pretty quick. Like, if you don't have a sense of who you are, I don't envy that.
That's such a good point. And that applies to more than just religion, right? Like, if you in general, like, right? Like, yes. I think that, I think a lot of us have found, like, reasoning behind this stuff through religion, but at the same time, like, if any people go through difficult things, religious or not, and if you don't have a sense of who you are, you're never coming out the other side of it,
Yes.
And honestly, like, I think that's what's so cool about hardcore in this scene in general, is like, it gives a lot of these people purpose and a reason, because again, like, man, when I got married to my wife and was, first started bringing her to shows, and she's freaking out because of how aggressive they are. But it's like, this is a place for me to go out and express anger, because I can't do it anywhere else. And these people understand it. They're pissed off too. And we shake hands and hit each other on the back at the end. And we're family at the end of the day, and it's just, it's important to have that sense of identity before you go through any of that stuff,
Yeah.
So.
I mean, I agree with you. I think for the hurt and the hurt and the harm that can come from a dysfunctional subculture, there is always values and value systems and gold within it as well. And so the point for me, right, the real message from my heart would be, find your identity in Christ, not in anything else, because it's all just so crazy. But you're absolutely right. If so Eric came because he sings in Creed, that song Creed, with me, and he brought his son Ford, and he's got 5 sons. So he brought so 2 of them were there, and they're both like 14, 15 years old. And you watch them the whole show. It was like their first like show experience, where they're like on the edge of the pit the whole time. Like, are we going to go in? Are we, it was one of those nights where it's like your first show. We're like, am I going to jump off the stage? Is someone really going to throw me up? And it was a coming of age moment a little bit. And he told me about it later, and I was like, for real? And he's like, yeah, like, this was a big night for them. And I'm like, oh, that's awesome. What were they learning? Was that sense of like, man, am I going to get in there and potentially get, like, am I going to live to tell the tale? Like, am I going to experiment here? Is this masculine energy? Is this like, who am I as like a young guy? Like, this is kind of scary. Like, this is that adventure. And I kind of love that hardcore is such a hyper masculine culture. I get a kick out of that a little bit, because I'm kind of a sweetheart, like, emo kid, but like, I'm pretty competitive too. So like, I remember my first show experience, and I remember the first time I experienced like really violent dancing, and I was just like, holy smokes, like, it was different. And it's like, oh, that's a world changer right there. Like, that's a different thing. So that's the gold. The dysfunction is the pain and the angst and the heaviness, some of that sorrow, some of that, the heavy hatred that can be there, man. That's a killer. So you really got to dance. You got to dance with some wisdom in a scene like this, because it'll build you up and it'll break you down pretty good. And that's why, in the midst of that, I would say, hey, faith in God is going to be primary. Otherwise, you won't know who you are. You'll be defined by the culture instead of defining yourself by something higher than kind of all culture.
Sorry, Trevor, I've hogged a lot, but
you're good.
Yeah, dude,
I just
said, geez, shut up.
I know, right? Believe me, I hear that enough, right? So, so I think that's really cool what you said, and interesting, because we were fortunate enough to talk to Jay Ost, who's the guitar player for With Honor, right?
Wow.
Yeah, he's super, like one of the nicest guys that we've talked to. But one thing
Wow.
that
What a
he
good
said,
band. That's cool.
yeah, he said that, With Honor has always made it a point to be like positive, right? Like their lyrics are very much like positive, overcoming all this stuff. And you're right. Like I do feel like there's this really important message in a lot of these bands in hardcore that are like, because that's kind of where it came from, right? Like a lot of the straight edge movement was like, I don't need to destroy myself like punk kids did, right? I can live on a higher plane.
Yep.
And I think that's really cool that when you get down to like the bare bones of hardcore, like that's what it was rooted in. It was like, I don't have to kill myself. I don't have to, OD. I don't have to be drugged out to have this counterculture and be against the man or whatever it was. But at the same time, I feel like lately, hardcore has kind of moved into where this like hate and anger has just like seeped in and started weighing very heavily on a lot of people and a lot of bands. And I sometimes struggle with some of that side of hardcore that it's like, I don't know. I don't really know where I'm going with this more than just like, I miss the days of like when there were positive bands, when there was like the youth crew movement of like, that I can overcome this terrible place that we're in. I can overcome the hatred. I can overcome all this. Sometimes it's just anger, and I that misses on me a little bit. So,
well, it's interesting you're saying that though, because in the end, I think that there's a lot of people who need that at this time. I think that's why we're actually seeing it.
That's what I was going to say, right?
We got stuck in COVID.
What we go through? What did we just go through as a people? And we need to be able to go, and then at the end of it, someone's going to go, and let's keep going. Like, so we got to breathe with it. Is that what you're trying to say a little bit?
I'm right. Exactly. I'm right there with you. Like, there's just so much in the world right now, whether you're political, whether you're, moral issues, religious issues, whatever it is, there's so much that's just like, everything is about fighting right now.
Yeah.
That's just the world we live. We live in a divisive world. And so the fact that we're seeing so much of this, I think is just a symptom of the divisive world we live in.
Yeah.
It's cyclical. We just talked about it. Everything's cyclical. At some point, people are going to get sick of it and there's going to be positivity that gets brought back. But in the end, hardcore shows 9 times out of 10, at least if you're not a pain in the ass for most people, are a positive experience.
It's true. It's true. One, I think that's the healing in it, right? Like it is cathartic on purpose. Like we go through this experience together and then we go home. And I think, what's that song called, man? By No Innocent Victim. I think it's called CEB. And it's like a place for us to get it all out. And he says like, no attitude, just energy, right? It's like, and then we go home at the end of the night. Like, but we just have this space to kind of like get this feeling out. And I think it's really helpful. I think it can be very helpful. I think when just like anything, if it becomes about, kind of serving itself, it can become kind of sick and ingrown. But if it actually helps people deal with what's going on for real, then they'll move through their life and they'll bring the values that were good with them, So I think it can, it's good for the good that it could do. And I think it's going to be on people to make their decisions. That's where it's like, you're going to walk with wisdom or you're going to let it get you. And that's going to be for people to figure out,
That's for sure. So I have a personal question for you, dude. You're such like a personal guy. You're personable. You're outgoing. Like you said at the beginning of this, you like to be the face and the voice behind things, right? Yeah. Do you ever like come across when you're doing like Run Against Traffic or when you are doing other things that people who don't know you as Tommy Green, the vocalist for HolyName, the vocalist for Sleeping Giant, that when you say, hey, I was in heavy metal, that they're like, no.
I said, because I work right now, like I work as part-time as a hospice chaplain. So I go to like memory care centers and like assisted living homes and stuff like that. And I'm like, in a call, I don't try to show tattoos or anything. So I just show up and like, I'm with all these people that are at the end of their life really. And they're, I joke about it to try to protect myself, but I'm just going to go hang out with everybody's dying grandparents today. Like that's what's going to happen. So, but I'll say that to people. I'm like, I was a musician for many years before, I did this. And they're like, oh, what kind of music? And I'm like, it was like Christian metal. And they're like, what? Like, so yeah, absolutely. Cause it's like it's out of place. And if you don't look like, a gold tooth and like a neck tattoo, people are like, really? Like, you look like such a nice boy. Like, you look like my grandson or whatever, and I'm like, all right, yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure.
It's just so funny because, like I said, dude, you're the nicest dude. Like we met a couple of times, right? Just like in passing a couple of times. But every time, to be honest with you, like you've left a lasting impression on me, just like how nice you've been in our brief 3 to 5 minute interactions. Like that was it kind of thing. Like it wasn't anything crazy, but
awesome. I hope so.
It's so cool.
Thanks, man.
But also like, it's just like, it's something in the presence about like the way that people just hold themselves and the way that they do it, that like my mom was like the worst when it came to my music. She was like, you will not listen. The worst fight I've ever had with my parents is about music.
Yes.
Like, and I
get it. I totally get it. Yep.
I'm like, I want you to meet Mom. Come meet Tommy. Like, you'll understand if you just meet Tommy. Like, he'll change your mind. You'll listen to Blame It on the Holy Rollers.
Believe him? Okay. Yeah.
I can see where this is going. But
I get it, man.
Yeah.
Oh, that's true. Thanks for saying that. I mean, the reality situation is, to be like fully honest about it, is like, I hope so. And then in my heart of hearts and kind of in my day-to-day life, what I'm realizing is like I'm working through being profoundly angry. And I think a lot of sadness, and I think just below the surface at any given point in time, I could just like become such an impatient prick. And I'm like mad at everyone. Right. And so I'm realizing that that's coming from somewhere, but my heart is to be like cool to people. But like, dude, just below there's this like vibration that I'm like, God, I got to get healed, man. I don't know what is going on. So it's in there. Right? There's a little crazy in there, but I really try to I want other people to have joy and hope. And so even if I don't feel it myself, I really want other people to be encouraged. So I'm very grateful that you said that. Thank you. I hope that I've never been a dick, and that's been
man. So like, my grandma passed away like a couple months ago, and she was in an assisted living thing. And my grandma's like,
wow,
Mormon as it comes, generational. And she had, I think, a chaplain from a different church tried help her, and she was not all there. I feel really bad because I think she yelled at the guy to get out.
Sure. That totally happens. I'm like, hey, I don't have a dog in the fight. I'm not trying to convert you. Do you have a church? And they're like, yeah. Like out here, especially in Salt Lake, it's like 95% of my patients are like, I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints. And I'm like, well, that's great. If you want to talk about like sports or just like hang out, you just let me know. I'm going to come see you. If you need prayer, let me know. But I just want to make sure that you have religious and spiritual support. Sounds like you do. If you need a blessing, let me know. Otherwise, peace. You
said that, and I was like, "Oh man, I really hope it wasn't you that my grandma yelled at."
And this lady was like, "Get lost!" And I was like, "Whoa!"
She might have. I don't know. She was a little feisty there her last little bit. So,
bro, it's a wild season, man. It's a hard time.
Well, listen, we don't want to keep you too much longer. Cool.
What else? Is there anything else, man? What else? What else you got?
I've got just a couple more here real fast for you. Number one, why Utah? Like, what brought you to Utah, and why have you stayed?
Oh, snap. That's a good question. I moved here in high school, and I finished high school in Salt Lake. I had a little girl. My daughter is like 24, just about. And I had her here. I got married to her mom, St. Pat's of 2002. Just after the hurricane ripped out all the trees in Memory Grove. We got married in Memory Grove, 2002. So a couple years later, and there were still trees knocked over at that point. It was wild. So then we moved to Southern California. And in Southern California, kind of my world blew up. And that's kind of where I became a Christian. And then my daughter, this will be, woo-woo, whatever. But I really felt in that season of my life, I felt like God would communicate kind of to me in dreams. So I started having all these dreams in the night, and I kept ending up in Salt Lake. And I had a dream in particular where I was standing with my daughter on the banks of this river, and She was little. She was like 2, little blonde headed thing. And it's this beautiful little river. She jumps in the water in the dream and it's all beautiful. And I'm like, bear. And then all of a sudden it like boom, and the landscape changed. And it went from like green river, beautiful blue water, to it was like Crocodile Dundee. Like it was just brown dirt and it was churning brown water. And she's like going away from me. And I was like, Marin. And she wouldn't turn around. And then this wave hit her. And right when the wave hit her, I looked past where the wave went and there was like 4 crocodiles. And these 4 crocodiles dove in the water towards her. So then I dove into the water and I grabbed her and I'm pulling her up out of the river in the dream. And the water's so violent that like her little wrist is in my hand and she's spinning in the water. And I'm just trying to get her out of the river. And I popped out of the dream. And for some reason, I'm like, dude, she's going away. I don't know what's going to happen. And like a week and a half later, my ex called me and was like, I need to talk to you. And I was like, okay. And so I met with her and she said, hey, I'm moving back to Utah. I'm taking Marin. And I was like, no, that's not going to work. Cause I had her more than she did at that point. I was like, no. I started a church. I was like, I was like a Christian guy. I was like at the beginning of this journey. I'm like, no, man, you can't do that. So the courts just let her go. So I was like, oh my God. So I came out to visit like a month and a half after her mom moved out here with her. And I'm driving around the city, like crying, just like, I don't know what to do. Like, holy crap. And I saw the Wells Fargo building downtown and I'm like, dads work at banks, don't they? And so I went back to, I was like, I get a job at a bank. So I got home and I went to this church conference and this homie came up to me. And he was a military dude. He's tatted down and everything, but he was wearing a suit. And I'm like, Kevin, did you just come from a funeral or something? And he's like, no, man, I'm a service manager at Wells Fargo. And I was like, oh. And he's like, do you want a job? And I was like, I do want a job, as a matter of fact. So I got a job as a teller. I was still pastoring the church. And then I got promoted to be a banker. And I had to get promoted. That took months, right? And then they wanted me to stay there for a year once they promoted me. And I got done with my training and had a month and a half in like the quarter to try to hit some like sales numbers. And I hit them and then went to my manager and I was like, I need to move. The reason I did this is because my daughter's in Utah. I need to move. And she was like, pick the branch. I'll send you. So I found Sugar House and was like, that's where I want to go. And she's like, great. So me and Chrissy Green, had been married for just a little bit of time. And then we moved out here to Utah. And I thought we were coming out here to rescue Marin and go back. This was supposed to be like 2 to 3 years. And that is not what happened at all. Yeah. So I came out here for my daughter and that's what I've been here for. And then me and Chrissy started our own little family and we were doing stuff here, but it was for the kid. If I'm really honest, up until 2018, I didn't know fully how to relate to this place. It was like my home. It was like where I grew up. It was where I've made horrific choices and a lot of really bad mistakes. And I never fully felt at home here. I didn't feel at home anywhere. If I'm really honest, I really loved Redlands where I was in California. I chose to move there. It was like the first place I picked to move. So I really loved that. And that was home for a long time. I kept going back. Like, I'm going to look back. We're going to get back there. And that was not the plan. And so I was out here and then my daughter, my commitment to myself and me and Chrissy was we're going to keep Marin safe. We're going to get her through high school. And my plan was she was going to walk across the podium and I was going to take a picture and then I'm out. Like, I was like, I'm leaving. And her mom had moved out of the state right at the beginning of her senior year. So then she's here. And then my little brother died. And all of a sudden I'm at her graduation. My brother's gone. I'm sitting with my family. We're like shattered. She's walking across the podium. We're her only family here. This is not at all how I thought this was going to go, whatever. And so I came out here for Marin. I stayed out here for Marin. And then when my brother passed, the city showed up for my family. There was a fundraiser that raised like tens of thousands of dollars for his funeral. And like the town took care of us. And that was the first time I was like, this is my town. Like, this is where I'm going to be. And that was probably the first time I was like, this is going to be my city now. And it showed up for my family. And so I'll do what I can to show up for it. And so I literally thought I was not going to be here that long. Like, I was like, thought this was like a 5-year play maybe. And then we're back to sunny California. But that place sucks sometimes anyway. So it's fine. No big deal. It's too much traffic. Anyway, so we stayed out here for family. That's why we've been out here. And I just committed to Christ when I got like saved. I was like, wherever my daughter is, I will go and I will tell people about you. And so when that was Redlands, I went back to Redlands, and that's where I did it. When she came here, it was like, we moved here, and that's where I did it. But in a lot of ways, it was about the kid. And then at a certain point in time, it just was like, this is where we're going to be, I guess. So that's kind of it. Is that good?
That's incredible.
Okay. Yeah, it's incredible.
That's awesome, man. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, for sure.
I know your backstory. I know a lot of it. You've shared it often. And grateful that you're out here kind of thing. So
thank you, man.
That's awesome. I just have one more question, but Kyle, do you have anything else before we go?
Well, on the topic of Salt Lake, was that picture from your story today, the tornado that hit Salt Lake?
Yeah. Okay. In 99, dude, I was supposed to work I worked at a call center on 1st South and 6th East. And I remember I skipped work so I could just stay and hang out with friends in Sandy. And then I called in and they were like, dude, don't come in. And they were huddled in the downstairs entryway of this 2-story building that's now called like City Academy or something like that. It's like a school, but it used to just be a call center. And everyone was just huddled in this like little entryway while the tornado ripped through downtown. And I remember just being like, glad I didn't go into work today. That's cool. Like I just drove around and listened to like Cave In for like 2 hours and didn't care. I was like, all right.
That's
so
crazy.
anyway, it's so funny.
I saw that and I was like, oh shoot. I was in Wyoming when it happened, but my dad was working downtown and was like in a bathroom because it went right
it was
down,
no joke, dude.
The storm was wild, man.
That was that was bananas.
Yeah.
I mean, that was like, to me, I didn't realize there had ever been one in like the 1800s. So to me, and my story about it was like, this is the first and only time this has ever happened. What is going on?
For us, it was too. For us,
so
it was
crazy.
too. It was crazy. So I just saw that picture. I was like, oh, that's funny. That's a little bit of Utah history.
Like, hey, I totally remember that.
Yeah.
That was nuts. That was the first era of Salt Lake for me. That's crazy.
No, we were 8 years old at the time. So 99, we were 8. My dad was working in the Copper Top building in Salt Lake. And I remember sitting in my basement watching it all happen with my mom too. And I remember that whole thing. So it's always, it's crazy like seeing all that stuff.
It's funny now because we get those storms down here and I go on my back patio and film it.
I'd spend my summers with my dad and my stepmom, my little brothers. They were in St. Louis. That's where my little brothers were born. And my dad was a railroad guy. He drove the train for Union Pacific Railroad. That's why they moved here, was when he became an engineer, they moved him to Salt Lake from St. Louis. But like, there was lots of times where like, funnel cloud, touchdown, 10 minutes from our house. And if it wasn't super crazy, I just remember my dad going out on the patio and being like, we're going to barbecue. I don't care. I'll do the dishes. I was like 9, like, it's fine, whatever. So that was my experience, was like Midwest stuff. And then I was like, when did that start happening, out here?
Yeah.
It was wild. That was crazy.
It's crazy.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay. So really like my last stuff just comes down to kind of what's next, right? So HolyName's active. You guys are putting out, you talked about an EP kind of thing. So what's going on with HolyName? What's next?
Well, what's next for HolyName? We've been really kind of sober about the whole thing, which is like Joe that plays guitar, that writes everything. Me and him are like really tight, but he's just a little genius. Like, he's awesome. And I've known him for a long time. He is a warehouse manager in Minnesota. He's got 3 little girls and his wife. And I'm like, dude, how much time out of the year do you actually have to do anything that isn't work? And he's like, give me a couple days. And then he hits me back. He's like, I have 12 days. And I'm like, okay, how many of those days do we need for like actual writing and recording? And he's like, probably 9. And I'm like, so we have 3 days to do like anything. And he's like, yes. And I'm like, so when we started, I just thought, if we get to go on a trip, so like we got invited to play a festival in Germany at the end of September. So me and Chrissy, we're bringing our kids. Like, we're not doing this without like our wives. Like, we did this before, went all over, and it was like, it's rad to have all these experiences, but like, it's way cooler when you get to share them with your partner. And so we're like, dude, we're not going to be doing that much. So if we do anything, we're bringing our people, because we're not going to do this that way anymore. So we're going to go to Europe for like a week and a half, and I'm bringing my kids so they get to see it. And then that's it. And then, so that's it as far as trips. And I just said, in a lot of ways, I think if we can do our best to be sincere in our music, I think we can live on the internet and tour a bit there, because we can't get on the road. So when we did that live in Chicago, it was like, if we put out a cool show and it's out there, at least people can see and hear our music. I don't know what's supposed to happen. So that's been kind of my motto, is like, when we do something interesting, let's make sure we share it with as many people as we can. And then if we get to a space where we can get out and play more shows, maybe then we got a better shot of at least people knowing who we are. So that's kind of it, man. I want to keep putting out music, and the biggest thing for me is like, HolyName has helped open up this door called Rock Against Traffic. And so for me, that the Rock Against Traffic kind of thing, whether that's working with homies in different states to put on small festivals or being a part of all of them, I don't know, but that's what I'm really looking forward to next in terms of music for HolyName, is like, if we get a chance to help showcase young bands, we get to be a part of the scene with what influence we have, I will feel good about that. And I'm older, and I want the young kids to just do their thing. But if I can help create any space for that, that's what will help me now. Is I'm done. I feel sometimes like I'm kind of done being the athlete, and I'm stoked to just be like a coach. Like, I just want to see other people do it. Yeah. And I love watching other people have a good time. And I like couch dates with my wife. So like, I'm good. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm good, man. Like, I've done plenty. So the fact that I still get to kind of participate is really rad. That's way cool. So I don't have high ambitions. I just want to keep putting out cool music. And what do I think? You know what would be tight is filming HolyName live in Greece. And people are like, insane. What? Like, it's like, how that band is no one. Where did that happen? Like, that's what gets me stoked, is like, how do they do that? And it's like, well, we just like make it happen. Like, that's the type of thing that I would have fun with. It's like, HolyName live in Tokyo. It's like, who even knows them? How do they do that? Like, that's the thing that makes me excited, because what I'm trying to do is just make our own lane, because I'm not interested in playing the game, and I don't have the time or the energy to sacrifice to be 3 of 5 on some national trip. Like, I don't care. Like, there's young dudes that want to stay up all night driving. Do that, do that shit right now, because this is when you do it, like, yeah. I'm good. So I forgive me. I think that's it. I just want to put out music, and then if we get a chance to perform for people, I'll be stoked. But I also just kind of like having fun and doing what we're doing. So
that's sweet.
I think in terms of shows, if I can help put on shows that raise money for a really important cause to me, that's what I want to be a part of in the scene. I think that'd be a really cool way to like reap for what I've sown for a long time, and then just let everybody else do their thing. You know what I mean? So,
I think that's incredible. And I think that the Rock Against Traffic down in California, I think you guys are off to a great start with that.
Thanks, man. Thank you.
I think that they're really going to be able to capitalize on it. So what about Sleeping Giant? Are we ever going to see Sleeping Giant on stage again?
I can't say never. The dudes called me, and when we ended it, I ended it the way I ended it because I ended it. Like, I was done. I want to do it well. I don't want to just be a reunion band in 5 years. I'm not interested. And to be completely honest, I went on like a faith change a bit too. So like, it'd be like being vegan, and now I'm not vegan anymore. And now I'm going to sing these like militant vegan songs for people. Like, there's certain parts of that I'm not there anymore. So I'm not in a position where I can say, yeah, dude, I want to get back on stage, because what made Sleeping Giant was our guitar tone. It's like, no, it was like the experience of like, they're about it. And if I'm not really there, I don't want to damage what we had by cosplaying that I'm like into it. So until I really feel like I could do that with a full heart, I'm not going to touch it. But we have had offers. We've had offers like, come back and do this. And I'm like, dude, I'm done. But the other dudes have even hit me up and been like, bro, what do you think about? And I'm like, bro, but I've really had to pray about it. Like I prayed about it for like months. Like, should I be saying yes to some of these things? And it's like, I can't right now. And I don't know. So no, I'm going to say like, I'm going to say no, but I can't say never because I'm not God and I don't know. And it was really beautiful. When I go back and listen to it now, sometimes I'm like, that was fun. Like that was a cool record. Like that was awesome, but I'm not there. So I need to be in a good place to be like, yeah, let's go back and do this again. And let's make this a thing. But I don't feel like SG, I know that SG was like a thing, but it doesn't feel as cool to me as like the reunion bands that I want to see. And so I'm just like, yeah, I don't think Sleeping Giant's on that level, dog. I feel like, like it's okay. So I like that people like it, but yeah. So anyways, so listen, no, just get out of your mind. And the only reason it would happen is if the Lord was like, dude, it's time. And I don't know, man. I just don't know.
All I'm hearing is the Dumb and Dumber. So you're saying there's a chance. That's all I'm hearing. I know you said no, but yeah,
I'd say more like 1 in a million.
Oh man, no, that's so great.
Awesome. That's good.
And I really appreciate that because it is interesting to see a lot of these old bands who have retired 6 times, 7 times, and all of a sudden they're back 3 or 4 years later. And we make the running joke like, oh, they must have had to pay their rent kind of thing,
It starts feeling like a cash grab, man, where I'm just like, dude, it's fine. Make your money, man. If people want to pay to see you, that's awesome. But how about this? There's a doctor that wrote a bunch of books and she's a gangster. Her name is Brene Brown. And she said one time, nostalgia is like a false sense of intimacy. You're reminiscing over a time that doesn't exist anymore. And the thing that made Sleeping Giant important to me was it was real in that moment. And it was special to me. It was the coolest thing I'd ever done with my life in ministry. It was the coolest thing I'd ever been a part of. It meant so much to me. It was real. And the time with the audience and everything, like there was intimate like connection with people and we prayed for people. It was like, that was real. I don't want it to be nostalgia. That is like, it's corny, dude. Like I can't, I don't know. And we played Furnace Fest and there was amazing bands and I got to watch amazing bands. And I even asked if HolyName could play this year because I just wanted to play with Coalesce. Like I thought that would be sick. Like they're one of my favorites. And I'd love to play with NIV again because they helped me get saved, So like I was down to be a part. And there's bands that are coming back that I'm like, they're not doing it like that. But then there's a lot of bands where I just watch them and I go like, no, I don't believe you, man. I don't believe you guys anymore. And that's what this is to me, is like dangerous ass belief. Yeah. And if I don't feel that ain't Salt Lake City to me feels like you're stepping into something. If it doesn't feel like that, I don't know. I'm just like, that's okay. Like there's a reality to hardcore that's like, you should feel like this is a different world. And if it just starts feeling like we're at Coachella with tattoos, it's like, I'm not interested. That's all right.
It's funny you bring up Furnace Fest because we're going this year and we're going to see Bane. And it's like, was this Bane's like 6th
dude
coming out of retirement show or whatever?
Like I watched them. I watched my little boy like really he loved that last Turnstile record. So I filmed the Turnstile set and sent it to Rada. Like it's fine. You know what I mean? It's super, hey, please watch one song of Coalesce and send it to me. Send me a video, please. That would be sick. But yeah, that's awesome, man. I'm trying to think of who else is going to be there.
No Innocent Victims going, man. And
yeah, I mean, watch NIV for sure. I just got to sing. So that was a special thing, is that Jason Moody from NIV sang with me at the show. And that was like my favorite, like special guest because he helped me become a Christian in 1999. And so I just was or opened my eyes up a little bit. I didn't become really a Christian until later, I guess. But like he was Sleeping Giant to me. And I was like, oh, this dude's like not playing, and this was awesome. So to have Moody on stage with me was tight. So I felt like we went to do the set, and I have my in-ears in, which is new. That's like the third time I've ever had those. And I was like, wow, we're like a big deal. And so I've got these in-ears in, and it starts playing, and I hear I hear No Innocent Victim over my song. And I just start laughing and like almost miss my cue because I'm like, yo, this is awesome. So anyway, that's awesome. Watch those dudes. Send me videos. It's super cool, you guys.
We'll hook you up for sure. Well, awesome. Listen, you said Sleeping Giant, like you felt like you were kind of like nobody's kind of thing. You were important. You were important to us. To be honest with you, I wanted to share my first kind of memory of Sleeping Giant. Is we were into the MySpace era, right? We were like the post-hardcore, we were into metalcore, all of that kind of stuff. Hardcore was still kind of foreign to us.
Yeah.
I remember driving around, and Josh Nemchek.
Yes.
And he's blasting, it was probably Sons of Thunder, I think is probably what he was blasting at the time. And this was leading up right to before Scream the Prayer, 2008. Yeah. So maybe I have the album wrong. I don't remember. What was would Sons of Thunder been before 2008?
No, I think our first one was 2008. I think Sons of Thunder was 2009.
Oh, okay. So it was the first album.
The first record, probably the first record at that point.
Yeah. Sons of Thunder was 2009, according to Apple.
Yeah, I think that's 09. I think was that guy. So
we're playing. Is it called Dread Champion?
Yeah, Dread Champion's Last Days.
Sure. Yep, we're playing Dread Champion, and I just sit there and remember. I'm like, dude, this is too heavy for me. I was like, I don't know if I could do this. And then we went and we saw you at Scream the Prayer. And again, we're young kids. We take a step back and we just watch the crowd just go wild.
All my homies showed up for that one.
Everyone.
I remember
we knew.
They didn't want to pay. And so they waited outside until our set, and then they came in, and I was like, yes. And Chrissy Green, who's like the sweetest human of all time, is like sitting on the side of the stage, and other dudes on tour, they knew that I was from there, but they thought SG was like California band. So we get to Salt Lake, and all my friends just go bananas. I remember 2 or 3 of the guys on tour just being like, what? Who is this? And Chrissy's like, they're Tommy's friends.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I remember that whole day, right? Because we got there at like 1 or 2 in the afternoon, and we're sitting there, we're listening to like Here I Come Falling, A Graceful,
Blessed by a Broken Heart.
Blessed by a Broken Heart.
Broken Heart, dude. Yeah, for sure.
And the only thing I had in the back of my mind the entire day was, this shit's about to get wild. Giant steps on stage. And so like, that was like our introduction, and Sleeping Giant was a huge introduction towards more hardcore for me.
Wow, that's cool.
So,
I'm grateful. I'm grateful for that.
Yeah,
that's funny.
No, now we listen to everything. Awesome. So
I remember just looking out like, oh no.
Yeah, hey, we thought the same thing, man. Don't worry. As like 17-year-olds, we're like, yeah, we're sitting this one out.
Yeah, dude,
that was rad.
It was great.
So rad. That record was my favorite. It was my favorite Sleeping Giant record, that first one. It still is when I go back to it. It was really special. That was a good time for me. That was, to me, the most, if I could be honest, that to me was the most pure version of me in that band, was that first record. Everything else was, I was hanging on for dear life and trying to serve and trying to grow and learn, but like I was trying to keep up with it after that. But that first record was just like, it was so rad, and I was so stoked on it, and I had such a good time making it, but it did set the standard for kind of how it goes. If you look at that first record, I'm going to say this, and I'm saying this for the first time. I think that me getting a chance to put that first record together the way that I wanted to set the standard for how I do HolyName. When you think of like all the guest vocalists and all the stuff that's on that record, it's like, oh yeah, like that's how I would build a record, like a rap record. Like I like when there's features. I think those are so I just realized, I'm like, yeah, I think that is always my favorite way. Like it's more of a party when we're putting everything together. We get to have all the new homies on it, just different people get to be a part of it. but I love that record. So that's cool. I'm glad that that's like your first exposure. That's really cool. That's super
Yeah.
fun.
So,
Shout out Josh, dude. Thank you. Thanks, Josh Nemchek. That's so hard.
dude, we love Josh. So Josh, he's our third host. He comes on here from time to time. And to start our episodes, we do Crow Killer. We have a Crow Killer clip.
Yes. So good, man.
So sick. But for real, dude, we really do appreciate your time. You're so generous to be able to even offer to hop on with us. And
man, it's important.
We really do appreciate it. We'll make sure we tag everything. Run Against Traffic, so important. We'll get that HolyName. We'll make sure we get you guys set up there. Anything else you want to shout out real quick, but just before we hop off?
What would I say? Oh, if any bands or music people need screen printing or merch stuff, let us know. I run a company called Ritual Print Company, and it's here in Salt Lake, and we do all of that. So there's tons of really dope shops all around. But if anybody needs, if you know bands that are looking for stuff like that, just message me. I'm happy to help people. So sick. Ritual Print Company for, I don't know, screen printing and embroidery and blah, 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 all that stuff. So
we'll tag that up too for you.
Thanks, man.
Dude, for real, we appreciate it. Yeah. We'll catch you soon. Maybe you and I can grab lunch or something one day.
Yeah, dude. Love it.
Okay. All right, brother. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Peace.